Hey guys, what's up? So today I'm looking at a line of pedals from Donner, their Embark series, a very minimalistic kind of stripped down version of classic pedals. And I'm going to show you guys how I might use each one of these in my setup here. So stay tuned. Alright guys, so if you saw my video a couple weeks back, or like a week or so, I looked at this Donner, like Ibanez copy guitar, and you know, it's this Strat thing, humbucker single coil. I went through the whole thing with this guitar. Actually a pretty cool guitar, especially for the price. I'll link up the video that I did on that over here somewhere. And when they sent this guitar to me, they also sent me 4 of their Embark pedals. Now, this particular pedal line actually has 6 pedals, but the echo pedal, which is the delay pedal, and then the octaver pedal, they're sold out. So they don't have them to, give to me. They do have the phaser, the chorus, the distortion, and the overdrive pedal, though. And I'll go ahead and check out those right now. So first up, before we get into any real tones here, you can see that these are very much a uniform look. They're just stark white. They have no real markings on them. They all say Donner on the bottom. They're all numbered. I think this is number 3, the phaser, number 4, the chorus, number 2 is the distortion pedal, and number 5 here is the overdrive. 1 and 6 not available, but these are meant to be kind of entry-level, kind of budget-friendly guitar pedals that kind of go for really classic sounds of pedals that you might have seen elsewhere in the past that are much more expensive. Right now, they're only about $24 on Amazon, and I'll link down below to each one of these. The finish on here is kind of a matte, or like a satin. No, I wouldn't say satin. It's more of like a matte kind of white finish, very much not glossy. You could easily paint, whatever you wanted on this pedal. You could decorate these however you want. They even send along some stickers that you can put on these pedals to customize them. Granted, they're, kind of limited in what they are, but, I was happy to see they have some cats, if you're into cats, which this household is. And then they have some stuff that kind of bridges on, like, trademark infringement. I won't put those up for too long. Kind of kitschy, little gimmicky in that respect. For my personal aesthetic, I like the stark white. Kind of reminds me of the JHS Series 3 pedals that are just very stripped down and minimalistic. So before we get into the tones, I just want to go over what each one of these is and what it does. We have a phaser here. So a phaser is a pretty classic pedal. This is a single knob phaser, very much reminiscent of the MXR Phase 90. In fact, when we hear it, I think it sounds almost identical to that pedal. The chorus pedal, a simple rate and depth, not too much going on there. If you go over to the distortion pedal, volume, distortion, tone, again, we are not looking at anything super revolutionary here. Probably on par with like something like a Rat. And then the overdrive pedal is pretty much a clone of any tube screamer pedal you'd ever, expect. Again, each one of these is only $24. And today I'm just running through the 5150 Iconic combo here because it still has the full suite of tones from clean to dirty to full high gain. And I'm using the Donner guitar just because, well, they asked me to, but at the same time it just makes sense to, kind of put 1-to-1. Anyway, so here's my clean tone on this amp running through the bridge humbucker on this guitar. And so first up, let's just go over to the phaser because it's the most simple, single knob, and here's what I got with it kind of around like the 10 or 11 o'clock range on the knob. Really classic. To me, I owned an MXR Phase 90 for a long time. It sounds pretty on par with that pedal. When I was in high school, I was super into Incubus, and that was like one of my favorite bands, and so I used the Phaser a lot to get some of those more kind of washy, kind of psychedelic tones that band sort of goes for. It's literally the sound. So anyway, the Phaser pedal, super simple, super good sounding. Has the full range of everything you need. Definitely one that I would, if I was looking for just a simple, straightforward phase pedal and I didn't want to spend the MXR money, which isn't really that expensive either, but for 24 bucks, probably go with that. The chorus pedal, again, not too much going on here. The rate and the depth, those are the two things you really need when it comes to chorus. For the rate, I'm going to go not quite in the middle, and then depth, I'm going to give it about noon o'clock there and see what happens. We'll switch over to the fourth position to get that kind of parallel spanky tone. I really like it there. It's subtly there. It kind of opens up that space a little bit without getting too like underwater sounding. But you can turn the rate up all the way and get really... You can get that undulation really going. Then with the depth, you just get a little bit more of that intensity. Really cool, really nice. Again, kind of like with the Phaser, you're looking for something that's just going to give you that chorus effect in mono, because these are all mono pedals, and seems to be relatively not noisy. Like none of these pedals have like a weird buzzy, noisy sound that comes through. And I'm even using like a pretty meager daisy chain setup here. A decent daisy chain, but still, sometimes these can introduce noise. These seem to be pretty quiet pedals. Like the Phaser, the chorus pedal, to me, these are... If you need two staple pedals that are going to be modulation effects, for 24 bucks a piece, for less than 50 bucks, or right about 50 bucks, you're going to get both of these, and you're going to end up having the majority of the modulation sounds that you would ever need for most applications. All right, now we're getting into the territory of what I do here, the high gain stuff. Now I'm going to keep it on the clean channel, because I'm going to try to use this distortion pedal like a distortion pedal in front of a clean channel. And so I have it set up kind of where I think I like it for this amp on the bridge humbucker. All right, so I got the pedal engaged, and there's a little bit of a noise floor. When I turn the guitar up, I'm getting a little bit of buzz, mainly from the lights in the room and me being so close to the amp. I don't have a noise gate on this amp right now, so you're going to have to deal with that. But here's what I got, and I think I have it set up kind of how I like it. Volume, tone, distortion. So, obviously, it works. The volume sweep, it's a very powerful pedal, I found out too. Like, it gets a lot of volume. Trying to volume match between the clean tone and the distorted tone. That's about where it sits. Tone sweep is pretty good. Yeah, the top end on that tone sweep is a little bit piercing. The EQ on the amp is pretty much in the middle. Even the presence I have in the middle. You could probably tweak around with the EQ on the amp, maybe scoop out your mids a little bit, and maybe temper some of the highs, but bring the presence up. Yeah, you can kind of get in like a dialed in, like thrashy tone, especially with this distortion pedal. Okay, so I'm going to keep the distortion pedal on for a minute, and I'm going to use the overdrive real quick in front of this distortion pedal to see if I can't kind of give it more of a boosted, distorted sound. I'm going to turn the distortion down just a tad. I'm going to keep the tone in the middle. I'm going to keep the drive down here to level up. So I'm basically going to use it like as a boost in front of a preamp, and we'll see what that sounds like. Now, getting that, like, kind of more 80s thrashy metal tone, you know, scooping out those mids, not too hard to do. I think, you know, a lot of those tones, a lot of those albums were built on distortion pedals in front of amps that weren't necessarily built for super high gain. Think of your, like, JCM 800s, or think of some of those early Marshall things. And having a distortion pedal like a Rat, like Proco Rat or something in that vein, makes a lot of sense. And putting this in front of that definitely tightens up that low end. I'm going to go to drop D real quick. And in drop D, let me see if I can't get this more textured to be a little bit more modern sounding. I don't know if that's possible. I'm going to lower the gain a little bit, volume up, tone scaled back, tone up on here. Mids, that's fine. Highs up, presence back. Yeah, I just don't think it's really built to do that. It's hard without it sounding a little bit thin, a little bit boxy, because having all that saturation up in front of the actual tube preamp, I think kind of stifles a little bit of the big sound that you can get from a tube amp. It doesn't sound bad, but it's not something I would go for. So I'm going to move on from this distortion pedal. I'm going to go back over to the overdrive here and kind of make it more of a classic tube screamer kind of deal. And so with the drive up a little bit, level in the middle, tone just scaled back a little bit. I'm still on the bridge pickup. Guessing to re-EQ that a little bit. Get my resonance back up. Highs can stay in the middle. Very tube screamer-esque. Not certain if it's an asymmetrical or symmetrical clipping, so it could be more like a SD1 if it's asymmetrical, but I think it's supposed to be a tube screamer. At least the literature online would allude to that. So the tone sweep on this thing is kind of interesting because at the bottom there's a real dark roll off all of a sudden, but kind of all the way through the middle it's so subtle, then right at the end it's like bam, big presence boost. Don't know if I typically like that kind of control because it's a little bit jarring to have all of a sudden. It makes it hard to dial in a little bit. Got a decent amount of saturation in that drive. The level. Big mid hump up in the upper mids. I think it works fine. I think it sounds very much like the TS9 or like 808, something in that vein. Anyway, so that's all the pedals through the clean channel. I'm going to jump over to the high gain channel and kind of mess with, well, I'll see what I mess with. I'm going to definitely see if I can't use this as kind of like a front end boost. And then maybe I'll see what kind of nastiness can come out of this distortion pedal. The modulation pedals I typically don't use with distortion on an amp, but maybe I'll check them out. I don't know. Let's go to that. Okay, so I'm over on the red channel here. The burn function is off. I'm just running a straight high gain tone. So yeah, I'm on the humbucker. I'm gonna engage this drive pedal as though it's just a clean boost. Kind of how I would a tube screamer. With that tone knob all the way up, it's a little much. I'm gonna scale that back. There's kind of a sweet spot with that tone knob. Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine. I think that works really well. Definitely does the tube screamer thing. The pickup on this particular guitar isn't really built for like high gain chuggy metal. I will eventually replace it. I kind of wish I did already, just so I could check this out a little bit more, but I wanted to keep it as stock as possible. Let me move on to the distortion pedal and see if I can't make it do weird things. Hold on. There we go. Yeah, okay, so that's absurd. But I mean, like, if you run like a fuzz pedal or any kind of like, you know, kind of really hard clipping distortion pedal in front of a high gain channel, you're gonna get a similar effect, and some people really like that. Anyway, yeah, I can go mess with that all day. Ever since I dressed down the frets on this thing, this guitar has actually been playing amazingly. I'm actually really impressed with it, more so than I was in my video, because there was a high fret. Now that that's addressed, this thing is crazy easy to play. These pedals sound pretty good, and yeah, I would definitely check them out if you're looking for a budget pedal to kind of do something easy with that doesn't look like anything because it's just stark white. You can do whatever you want to it. Check these out for 24 bucks on Amazon. Donner pedals. Anyway, that's what I got for you guys, so I'll see you later.